Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made for Shimmerz paints. I'm very excited to be a guest designer again for May, and I'm using the May color kits to create this layout. I started off using some of the pattern papers from this kit. I used some stitched triangle dies that were in my stash, and I not only cut out the pattern papers, but I also cut out some thick white cardstock 3 times. I layered the white cardstock on top of each other, and then I put the pattern paper on the top. I used ATG adhesive to do that, and then I inked the edges of all of the triangles. I used Distress Oxide in fossilized amber for the yellow triangles. I used Victorian velvet for the pink triangles, and I used speckled egg for the blue triangles. I had to make a lot more triangles because my concept for this page totally changed as I was making it. I was going to have the different size triangles spread across the page, but then as I was playing with the triangles, I was thinking that I wanted to have 6 large triangles and then layer the smaller triangles on top of those triangles so that the pieces would almost look like slices of a pizza. I started off with a piece of 120-pound gessoed smooth white cardstock. I am applying some sprays to the background. I happened to get a package that day, and there was this little bubble wrapped pocket inside, and I thought that works perfectly for me. I could almost use it as a glove to spread the color around. I started off with Vibes in the color Egg Noggin, and then once that had dried, I started using some Pink Lemonade Vibes. These colors go really nicely with the pattern papers. I'm spreading the color in kind of a circle in the center of the page. Usually if I know what elements or clusters I'm going to be putting on the page before I create the mixed media background, I'll mark where I think they're going to go with a pencil very lightly. In this case though, since I knew I was going to have a circle, I just went ahead and created a circle shape. I did have to extend it a little bit. I don't always do so on camera, but I do like to keep trying those clusters and pieces on the background just to make sure that I like where I'm putting the mixed media, and I also like the way the mixed media looks with the colors in the elements that I'm going to be adding to the background. So once I was done adding the pink, I turned that little bubble wrap glove over and I started adding some Shimmerz in Golden Wheat. I'm using 3 different colors of pattern paper on this layout, so I was thinking that I might want to just make the background one color, but then I really wanted to see what the colors look like together, and I ended up really liking the way this background looked with the pattern papers. Everything just ended up going together really nicely. I add a lot of splatters of the pink lemonade to the background. I am adding them all around that circle and making sure that I get some around the outer edge of that big circle of color. I like the way splatters look on the edge of any large area of color. Here I take one of the large triangles and I place it over the background. I just wanted to see how everything was coming together. And then I went back and I added even more of the pink lemonade splatters to the background. And I always dry my backgrounds in between layers of color just so that the colors don't mix together. I go back in with another layer of the golden wheat, and I just love that little pocket of bubble wrap. I was able to just keep flipping it over when I wanted to put on more pink. I flipped to the pink side, and more of the yellowish color, I just flipped it over to the yellow side, and shockingly, I didn't make a mess doing that. Here you could see that I'm extending that circle, making it a little bit bigger so that you'll be able to see some of the mixed media all around those triangles that I'm going to be putting on top of it. I again dried the background, and now I'm adding some splatters of golden wheat to the background. First, I was trying to just use a little bit that I had on my glass table, and then I decided that I had to water down the golden wheat a little bit more for it to splatter around nicely. Most paints really need a decent amount of water to get them to the right consistency so that they'll splatter nicely. I find, however, that sprays don't really need anything added to them. Once again, I grab the pink lemonade, and I'm continuing to add more of those splatters, again, making sure that I get them around the outside of this large circle. Now I'm using this stencil. This was from last month's color kit. I'm adding that to the entire circle, and I really just love the way this adds a nice subtle touch. It doesn't add another color, but it does add, I think, so much in that there's a lot of texture now on the background. I'm trying to be very careful about not smushing the modeling paste that's already down on the layout when I put down stenciling in a nearby area. In some cases, I wanted there to be some flowers that extended past the large circle of color. And with this stencil, it was very easy to just add a flower or two around the edge. I first added the flowers kind of around the outside of the circle, and then I went ahead and added some on the center of it. And then I went back to the edge and I added some of those single flowers. And then I often used my palette knife to scrape away any excess stenciling that I didn't want on the background. I should mention that I'm using Liquitex modeling paste for this background. I like the Liquitex modeling paste because it's very white. Some of the modeling pastes are a little bit off-white or gray in color, but if you ever get modeling paste that isn't as white as you want it to be, you could just add a little bit of acrylic paint to it, and that's a quick fix to make the modeling paste whiter. Now I'm adding some white splatters to the background. To make white splatters, I use watered down white acrylic paint. I keep it pre-mixed in a small jar that I keep very handy because I really like to add white splatters to my layouts, and I think I add them to almost every layout when I have a mixed media background. I'm going back in one more time with those pink lemonade splatters. I just love that color. And now my background is finally complete and dry, and I'm adding those large triangles to the layout. I thought that those large triangles were going to all fit together like a hexagon, but the triangle wasn't quite the right shape, and there was some space between the triangles. But I think that turned out to be a good thing because now you can see the mixed media between the triangles. I have had scrapbookers express that they feel it's a little bit of a disappointment that a lot of the mixed media background gets covered up with the elements that are layered over it. And I never really worried about that too much, but I have to say I was a little bit sad to cover up this particular background. I really like the way all those colors came together. However, even though some of it is covered up, there's still quite a bit visible. It's just part of making a mixed media background. There were some coral elements in this collection. You could see off to the left, there are some embellishments I'm going to put on the page in a moment that are coral colored. So I wanted to highlight that color. So I used a piece of coral colored cardstock from my stash. I used my Creative Memories circle cutters. I bought those circle cutters about 20 years ago and I still use them constantly. I made a border for my photo out of white cardstock, and then I cut the coral cardstock a little bit larger. After I attached my photo down to the layout, I was thinking I better get a title on this page because there was really no clear place I thought to put a title. I ended up putting it on the photo, this small paper house title. It's like a puffy sticker. It worked out perfectly. I was able to curve it a little bit so that it went along with the curve of the circle. The word escape is a good one because we were on vacation in Cape Cod. I did want to make sure that I found a place for the title before I covered the rest of the layout with embellishments and found that I had no place left to put a title. On one of the pattern papers, there are cut aparts. So I cut out a pink butterfly on the upper left-hand corner and then another shade of pink for the lower right-hand corner. I inked the edges of those and I popped them up on some foam. We received some really pretty dots in this collection. They're a little bit different from your average enamel dots. There's something slightly translucent about them. It gives the color a little bit of depth that regular enamel dots don't have. We received 4 different colors of dots, and I think I used all the different colors on this layout. I wanted it to have kind of a fun, colorful look. I not only spread them on the background, I also put some of the tiniest ones on those little tiny hearts, and then I added some to the centers of the butterflies. In the package of stickers I got the title from, there were also some white arrows, and I thought that those would make a nice addition to the triangles. I just thought it would add another nice little detail to them. So I picked out one either arrow or set of arrows for each of those large triangles. They're on the larger side, so I wanted to add another little detail to them. Then I did some slight repositioning of the triangles. I wanted to make sure that the photo overlapped all of them in the same way. There are a lot of colorful things on the layout, so I thought it would be a nice idea to add some white elements. I wanted to add a little detail to the title. I found there was a small white heart in that embellishment pack, so I added that as well. And then I borrowed a little blue enamel dot from the bottom of the page. I stuck it on the center of the heart. I wanted to add another detail and texture around the photo. I thought it looked a little plain, so I'm using these strips of self-adhesive pearls. I got these on clearance at Hobby Lobby several months ago. Just like with the arrows, I like the way they add some texture, some detail, but they don't add an additional color to the layout. Sometimes when there are so many things that are so pretty and colorful, it's tempting to put all of them on the layout. I find it tempting anyway. So often when I add embellishments toward the end of the process, they're a neutral color because I usually already have tons of color on the layout. Even though I really liked the way those dots looked on the butterflies, they actually looked very pretty. I didn't want to only have pearls in that one spot going around the photo. So I thought I would take the dots that were on the butterflies and distribute them around the layout. And then I would use some of those same pearls and put them on the butterflies. To me, that was just the most logical place to put additional pearls to tie everything together. I still felt that the photo looked a little plain, so I decided to add one of the dots that we got in the kit to the top of the photo. The dots are very pretty. We got 3 of them in this kit, and each one of them is super cute. I used a die that was in my stash. Even though most of it didn't cut out when I cut it on my die cutting machine, I was okay with that because I just wanted the border. That was the only thing that would be visible when I mounted it behind my photo. I realized later on that there were some areas that didn't cut quite right, even on that border. So I went back and I removed part of the border and I cut another little piece and attached that to the edge. I thought that would be easier than just ripping the whole thing off, and that seemed to do the trick to fix the border. I put the photo back in place and then I cut the pearls away that were behind the dot. I thought that would help the dot to sit flat on the photo. Even though I really liked the butterfly on the lower right-hand corner, I finally decided that it was just a little bit too big for where I had it on this layout. I'm going to use it on another layout that I'm working on right now. It'll fit better on that page. But for this page, I liked this smaller butterfly. I used the butterfly as a template. I traced around the outside of it onto the blue pattern paper. I trace it several times. Even though I don't use all the butterflies on the layout, I wanted to make sure that I had enough butterflies. I wouldn't have to go back and create them again. And then I did the same thing using the coral cardstock. I wanted to make sure that I had enough different areas on the layout where I had that color. I folded the paper in half to cut them out. That way I knew that the butterflies would be symmetrical. And in some cases, I cut on the inside of the outline to make the butterflies a little bit smaller, so I would have some different sizes of butterflies. Then I used some Distress Oxide to ink the edges. I used Abandoned Coral on the coral color butterflies, and I again used the Speckled Egg on the blue butterflies. And then I wanted to add a little something extra to them. So for the blue butterflies, I used a rubber stamp that was in my stash. It's a script stamp, and I added some white embossing powder, and then I heat embossed those, and I have to say the paper worked really well with embossing powder. For the cardstock butterflies, I found that the embossing powder wasn't working as well as I would like. So after trying a couple of times and not being happy with the results, I finally decided to use this stencil that has some very, very tiny holes in it and some modeling paste and make some texture on the butterflies that way. And I put another round of the Distress Oxide on each of the butterflies, and then I added some foam to the centers of them. This is just some adhesive fun foam. I cut it in strips, and then I put it on the back of each of the butterflies, and then I'm going to attach those down to the layout using some ATG adhesive. I relocated the pink butterfly to the top of the photo where I had the dot with the heart on it before, and then I moved the dot down to the right-hand side of the photo. I'm going to put some ATG adhesive on the back of all 4 of those butterflies, and I'm putting them in opposite corners. I wanted to add a little bit more of the coral color to the layout, and I think that this is just the right amount. After I had the butterflies positioned the way that I wanted them on the layout, I decided to go back in with those strips of pearls and add some to each of those butterflies. The pearls are the last touch. This layout is complete, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I greatly enjoyed creating the mixed media background using the Shimmerz paints and working with the beautiful pattern papers. When you place an order with Shimmerz paints, please put my name in the comments if you would like to receive a free gift. I hope that you have a fantastic day, and I will see all of you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.